Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, and Bradley Bowman, who served as a national security advisor to members of the Senate Armed Services and Foreign Relations Committees. Great to have you both with us tonight. And Eugene, I'll start with you first. We just heard a soldier there telling our reporter that Ukraine can win, but this will be a long war. Do you agree with that assessment of it?
I do. I've been to Ukraine 14 times since June of 2022 to October of last year on a multinational mission, and I'm quite familiar with the country, the terrain. I've been all around, and the Ukrainians have enormous motivation and heart. Even with the loss of Avdiivka this last week, they are nowhere near giving up, and they can win. They just need our help. As Zelensky said in the first days, he doesn't want to evacuate. He didn't want to evacuate. He needed weapons, and that's still what they need to this day.
Brad, do you agree? Can Ukraine outlast Russia if this is indeed to be a long war?
You know, that moving interview you just aired really demonstrates for me the extraordinary bravery that Ukrainians have shown for so long. I mean, really, you know, we're talking about a 2-year anniversary here. I'd really highlight that this is a 10-year anniversary since Russia's unprovoked invasion of Crimea. And they've just shown incredible courage and skill and fortitude in defending their country against this naked aggression. And the only reason that Ukraine continues to exist as a sovereign entity is the bravery and skill of the Ukrainian people and the weapons that the United States and its allies have provided. And I think Eugene said it well. They have the will to fight. They just needs the means. They need the means to do it.
Brad, if we look right now at the state of the war, the fact that Ukraine had to retreat from Avdiivka, they are outgunned at the moment because, as you said, the lack of military aid that's been flowing in. The counteroffensive didn't make the gains that had been hoped. What do you think led us to this point where Ukraine is right now?
You know, I give the Ukrainians success for repelling the Russian invasion in the early weeks of the war and 2022, and Kyiv still stands, and they've pushed back a lot of the initial gains, and they've had incredible success with asymmetrical warfare in the Black Sea. But there's no doubt that the counteroffensive was disappointing, and not for the lack of effort on the part of the Ukrainians. Part of that is that the Russians are a formidable foe. They're not too good at expeditionary warfare, but they're quite good at artillery attritional warfare, and that's what we've kind of settled into. It's almost a World War I style war with drones, and this plays right to right to Russian grinded out advantages. And if you deprive one side of ammunition and shells and missiles, then big surprise that the invader is going to start to make gains.
Eugene, I want to get your thought on that as well.
Sure. So the Russians don't have the strength to have major operational strategic gains. So they did what they could at the beginning of the war. They failed in Kharkiv Oblast in Kyiv, and they're holding a fraction of the territory that they held in the first year of the war. So this is a sort of not a frozen conflict, but a conflict where there will be incremental gains. The loss of Avdiivka was not an operational strategic defeat for the Ukrainians. It was a tactical defeat. The Russians are pushing on many different fronts, but they don't have the capability to seize vast swaths of terrain. So right now, this conflict will grind away until the United States and the Europeans, frankly, step up and provide the support that Ukraine needs. Up to this point, the Ukrainians have been given what they needed not to lose, but not enough to win. And that means a great deal more of ammunition is necessary. 31 Abrams tanks were promised and transferred. That's enough for a battalion. That's not enough for a significant offensive. The long-range fixed aviation, the F-16s, have yet to arrive. So there's a great deal more that the West and the United States can do to ensure that Ukraine wins, which is really in the U.S. and the West's national security or security interests. Because we don't want Russia on NATO's doorsteps.
The question is whether the U.S. and the EU are able to do that. And Brad, you know, if you look at what happened in the Munich Security Conference, you had lawmakers who were there as part of the U.S. delegation. You had European allies coming together, all promising more support for Ukraine. Do you think that is going to make a difference here in the U.S. in pushing some sort of aid package across the line?
You know, at this moment, after we saw the vote in the U.S. Senate, where you had 70 senators from both Republicans and Democrats voting for it, and only 29 against. You had 22 Republicans supporting this package of assistance for Ukraine, Taiwan, and Israel. But it's stalled in the House of Representatives, and the primary reason it's stalled in the House of Representatives is because a section of the Republican caucus there and the House Speaker. The message I've been saying to my fellow Americans is that, this is not charity. This is a wise investment for us. We've committed about $44 billion in security assistance to Ukraine since Putin's unprovoked reinvasion. And, that sounds like, ooh, billion, that's a lot. But to put that in perspective, that's about 2.7% of what we spent on the Pentagon over the same time period. And what have we gotten for that? Well, we're dealing body blows, the second leading military conventional threat we confront. We're decreasing the likelihood of a war between NATO and Russia. We're helping Ukraine continue to exist. We're demonstrating that we're not neutral when it comes to naked aggression. And we're sending a very positive deterrent message to Beijing as they contemplate whether they can accomplish their political objectives in Taiwan with military force.
All right, Eugene, I'll give you the last word because we just have about 30 seconds left. But a year from now, if Ukraine doesn't get substantial more military support, where do you think this war is?
Yeah, so I don't see the Ukrainians giving up in the short run. I mean, this is an existential threat to them. And frankly, there are European border countries, whether it's the Baltics or Poland, that are going to have a very difficult time living with Russia on their doorstep. So if we see the Russians making advances, I can see countries taking unilateral action. And frankly, it's basically the Republican Party, the MAGA Republicans, controlled by Donald Trump, that need to make sure that they follow U.S. and Western interests and defend our NATO allies, where we have a Article 5 commitment.
Right. All right, Eugene, Brad, really good to have both of you on the program tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, the war has had a devastating toll on civilians. The UN has documented more than 10,000 civilians killed, including more than 560 children. But the real number is believed to be much higher. And while Ukraine has suffered the most,